Here's something I've noticed talking to healthcare professionals who are thinking about leaving. At some point in a conversation, almost all of them say some version of the same thing. I think I need to go back to school to do this properly. And when they say it, there's this particular tone. It's not excited, it's not even confident, it's kind of resigned. Like they've already accepted a sentence. Like going back to school is something they owe themselves before they are allowed to move forward. And I understand that feeling completely. Healthcare culture trains you to wait for authorization, a credential, a qualification, something official that says that you've earned the right to operate in this new space. So, of course, school feels like the responsible move. But here's what I've come to believe after going through multiple transitions myself and watching a lot of other healthcare professionals navigate this. Going back to school is sometimes absolutely the right call, and very often it's just an expensive way to avoid uncertainty while feeling like you're making progress. And the reason that's so hard to see from the inside is that those two things feel identical when you are in them. So, let me reframe the question you are actually asking. Because I don't think do I need to go back to school is really the question that you are asking. What you are actually asking is, how do I reduce risks while changing careers? And school feels like it solves that. It promises credibility, it promises structure, it promises that feeling of permission. The sense that you've done a responsible thing, so whatever comes next is justified. The problem is that school doesn't reliably deliver on most of those promises, at least not in the way that people expect. And if you go in hoping school will remove uncertainty, you'd come out more qualified and just as uncertain. Except now you've spent, say, 2 years and probably a significant amount of money to get there. So, the better question, the one that actually clarifies the decision, is this: what specific problem am I trying to solve by going back to school? And once you answer that honestly, it gets much clearer. Now, let me be fair here, because I'm not making the case that school is never the answer. There are situations where going back to school actually makes sense. If the role you want has, say, a non-negotiable credential requirement, that's just the reality. Some paths have legal or formal barriers that aren't optional and you have to clear them. That's fine. There are also fields where the theoretical depth is genuinely hard to build on your own, where structured progression matters and where the cost of getting it wrong is high. In those cases, school can be the right investment. And then there's a third case that I think is actually the most legitimate one. When you've already validated the direction you want to go, when you know the specific role, you've spoken to people doing it, and you've tested your interest against the reality of the work, and school would accelerate the decision you've already made with confidence. In that scenario, school is a strategic amplifier. It's strengthening a direction you've already tested. That last version of school, I have no problem with. School works best when it's the next step in a plan and not the plan itself. But here's where it goes wrong for most people. And I want to be specific because I think these patterns are really common. The first one is using school to buy confidence. There's this belief that after the degree, the fear will go away, that you would finally feel ready. But confidence doesn't work that way. It doesn't come from coursework. It comes from proof, from doing something in the real world and seeing that it works. A degree doesn't remove the fear of being a beginner. It is evidence that does. And you can't get evidence in a classroom. You only get it in a field. The second one is using school as permission. And this one goes deep for healthcare professionals specifically, because we've been trained to wait for authorization our entire career. A license, a certification, something official that says now you're qualified to operate. Tech doesn't have that structure. Tech doesn't grant permission. It evaluates output. What have you built? What have you improved? What can you show? And no degree changes that equation. And the third is the hardest to admit, like using school to avoid the discomfort of being visibly new. Because school is safer than learning in public, safer than building something that might not work, safer than sitting in a meeting and feeling like the least experienced person in the room. School lets you be a beginner in a protected environment where it's expected and nobody is evaluating your output yet. And that protection is real, but it comes at a cost. School can protect your ego while quietly delaying the actual progress you are trying to make. So, what's the alternative? Because I want to be practical here, not just critical. The shift is this: instead of asking whether you need to go back to school, you ask what school would give that you can't get another way. And for a lot of people, the answer is actually smaller than they expect. Think about it this way. If you are a healthcare professional and you're exploring a move into health tech or data or product, you already have something most people entering those spaces don't have. You understand the problem, you've lived inside the system, you know where it breaks. What if instead of enrolling in a program, you took that knowledge and built something with it? A small project that solves a real problem from your own work environment, something that improves a workflow, organizes data that nobody has organized, or automates a task that everyone else complains about. That project is proof that you can do the work, prove that the skill functions in the real world, and prove that exists before you've made any major commitment. And here's the thing about proof versus credentials. Proof compounds, and every project you complete teaches you something that makes the next one better. Even real problem you solve builds a body of evidence that a degree can't replicate. Proof compounds faster than credentials, and it starts working for you immediately. I want to be clear that I'm not anti-school. I'm anti-unnecessary school. I didn't avoid going back to school during my first transition because I think education is overrated. I actually avoided it because I needed to reduce risks faster than credentials could reduce it. I needed proof, and I needed it while I still had income and stability. That won't be true for everyone, I agree, but it's true for most people that realize it. So here's the honest check before you decide anything. School will not guarantee you a job. It will not remove the uncertainty of starting something new. And it will not stop you from feeling junior again when you get into the room. And it will not replace the need to eventually build real proof in the real world. So if you go back to school, it should be because it directly serves a direction you've already validated, not because you are hoping that it will validate the direction for you. If you're really serious about making this transition strategically, go ahead and take the healthcare career transition readiness quiz. Before you commit to anything, you find the link in the description. It will help you get clear on where you actually are before you spend time or money on the next step. Going back to school isn't the problem, but expensive guessing is a big problem. Remember this: strategy first, everything else is optional. I'll see you in the next one.